Kind of a long story. For years I told people that I had had my first SM fantasies at puberty. And indeed, I did have a great many of them at puberty. But a few years ago, I had this sort of memory flash and remembered having been taken to the circus when I was very little, 4 years old, and sitting at the circus fantasizing about what it would feel like to get spanked by the strong man. So now I tell people that my SM fantasies go back about as far as my memories do, because that really is one of my earliest memories.
Welcome to What's Up With That, the show that brings you interesting people, places, cultures, and subcultures here in the South Bay, the San Francisco Bay Area, and beyond. And tonight, what's up with S&M? What's up with sadomasochism? What's up with pleasure and pain? For most of you may not know it, but S&M is a culture that's been going on for centuries and centuries. The sadist, of course, is the person who inflicts pain on the masochist, the consensual receiver of this erotic situation. Well, for most viewers, this may seem rather kinky, but you never know. Maybe your next-door neighbor is an S&M person. Maybe there's more people than you can imagine. Well, we do know that it's a very large subculture in the United States, and here to discuss S&M is the one and only Lady Green. Please welcome Lady Green to the show. How you doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Great. The first question, of course, is what is S&M, in your own words?
The definition I like to use is that SM is a behavior in which the participants eroticize sensations or emotions that would be unpleasant in another context. So people might find ways to enjoy physical pain or being controlled, being told what to do, things that you might not like in another context.
Right, like if somebody got a hammer and hammered your finger or something like that.
You probably wouldn't like it.
No,
yes.
I probably wouldn't like it.
Yes, but in the context of SM, we find ways to get tremendous pleasure out of strong sensations or strong emotions that we might not like otherwise.
Right, I think that's really important because the media representation of S&M kind of sort of has this person that goes around looking for any viable or any situation that where pain is involved, and for some reason, slamming your head on the door or something is going to get them eroticized.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to think that because someone is sexually masochistic, that means that they're going to enjoy stubbing their toe or going to the dentist.
Right, yeah.
They don't.
Well, I think of the scene in Little Shop of Horrors, of course, where the guy's sitting out in the lobby and he's like, yeah. And every time he hears a drill, he's like, ooh,
I suppose there may be someone out there like that, but I've never met them.
And unfortunately, there's so many people, believe that's more the norm. What kind of reactions do you get when you tell somebody that you are into S&M?
For a lot of the people that you meet these days, it's like, oh, cool, what do you want to have for lunch? Because more and more people are getting comfortable with the concept of SM. Other people are very shocked and upset by it because they don't understand the levels of negotiation and consent that go into SM. They buy into this media picture of someone non-consensually beating. So a good question to ask if someone were to tell you that they were into SM is, what do you mean by that?
Right. Where did S&M originate?
That's a very difficult question to answer. My feeling is that people have gotten some kind of erotic pleasure from taking power or giving up power for as long as there have been people.
Right.
the actual SM subculture is really fairly recent. You see a lot of SM in Victorian pornography.
Right.
So we know that it existed then.
Japanese
pornography. The current American SM subculture goes back maybe 5 decades. Not really that long. But my belief is that what distinguishes current SM practice from all these centuries of humankind is that in the SM community we've evolved ways to contain our desire to give up power or to take power and to make it safe and healthy to play with.
I think an issue that you brought up earlier in a pre-interview is the idea of consensual. And I think that that's a very important issue because, again, the media profile a lot of times is this profile of this strange person lurking around looking for this innocent bystander to attack them and tie them up and whip them and hang them upside down and slap them silly. I mean, that's in your face, but that's what people see, and that certainly isn't the case.
Not in the SM community. People are surprised, I think, the first time they go to an SM event to see the amount of discussion and negotiation and talk that goes on before anybody picks up a piece of rope. It's a good metaphor to think of SM as comparable to a high-risk sport like scuba diving or mountain climbing. It's not something that's so risky that people shouldn't do it, but it is so risky that it's a good idea to learn about it and talk about it.
To be a paraprofessional at least.
Yes,
right.
To ensure that everybody has fun and nobody gets harmed.
So what about the curious cat? You know, the one that walks into an S&M situation. What would you say to that person? The person comes in there and says, you know, I heard that you were into S&M. Spank me.
Well, the first thing I would do with a person like that is I'd spend some time talking with them about what their fantasies look like. Obviously, they have a fantasy about getting spanked, so we can start from there. But it could be that there are other aspects of the fantasy that they want to discuss. We'd also want to talk about physical and emotional limits. Some people have breathing problems or back problems or something that I would need to know about.
Issues,
sure. Some people have traumas in their past. It could be that they were non-consensually beaten with a belt, say, when they were kids, and so using a belt on them would be a bad idea.
Right.
Or it could be that they're terrified of snakes, and so for me to, you know, pretend that there's a snake in the room.
Bring a boa constrictor on, might be.
Yeah, or even talk about it.
Okay. When I think of a typical profile, okay, because I am not actively involved in the S&M community.
You're young.
But very curious about, you know, everything in life and understanding that this is a very large subculture. What is a typical profile, or is there a typical profile of an S&M player? I'm
not sure that there is. If you read the media portrayal again of people who play SM, you'll often read the cliche that it's wealthy, powerful people. And I think the reason that is because to find out about SM, they go to talk to professional dominants who charge hundreds of dollars an hour. Of course, what they're going to be seeing is wealthy, powerful people. In fact, the people I know in the SM scene range everywhere from people on general assistance to very wealthy people.
I can imagine.
In age, anywhere from 18 on up to into their 70s. All races, all subcultures, all genders, all orientations. It's really very difficult to draw an accurate picture of the typical SM person.
Right. Does there tend to be more substantially, let's say, a gay and lesbian following in S&M than in other communities?
In the past, I think that the gay and lesbian SM community has been more visible than the heterosexual community. I don't think that that's the case anymore. I think that, yes, there are many gay men and many lesbians who do SM. There are also many heterosexuals, many bisexuals.
So I always laugh when I hear the Village People, you know, macho, macho man, and here's this leather guy, and he's all, you know, and he's got all this stuff. And this is the images, of course, that I grew up on. So, you know, my perception of that, and would be that.
Yeah, I think still when people think of SM, a lot of people think of a gay man, a leather man. But if you were to go to an SM event, you would see both men and women. You would see everybody.
When did you first realize that you had an interest in S&M?
Well, that's kind of a long story. I'll try to shorten it. When I think back, I remember having fantasies when I was tiny, when I was like 3 or 4. I can remember being taken to the circus and fantasizing about what it would feel like to be spanked by the strongman.
Right.
It took me a very long time to recognize that those were SM fantasies, that they were sexual in nature. By the time I started actively coming to terms with those fantasies, I was in my mid-20s. By the time I actually started playing, I was in my early 30s.
If you don't mind me asking, your first S&M experience, were you terrified?
Paralyzed, yes.
Paralyzed.
Yeah.
Paralyzed and terrified.
And wildly excited. It was just...
And was it everything that you expected, or was it everything you didn't expect?
Some of both. It didn't come out like my fantasies, because they never do. The best you can do is kind of come close to your fantasies. But it was certainly good enough that I was definitely interested in looking for more.
Right.
Some of it worked, some of it didn't work.
So this is the issue of looking for more. Recently, I guess probably not recently because you said it's been around for a long time, there are actual play spaces that you can go to.
Absolutely.
Places that are owned by various individuals where you go to participate exclusively in S&M. We had a camera crew that went out to a place called the House of Differences, and we're going to look at a roll-in right now from the House of Differences with Elizabeth, who is the owner of the House of Differences. So let's look at a roll-in of an S&M play space.
It was conceived basically to open up and create a nice safe space, a clean safe space where you could come and practice the alternative lifestyles that you want. You can get education here. We have lots and lots of seminars and classes throughout the month. I give private lessons to novice couples that want to come into the scene. We also have several events, just socials events. We're open every Friday for a party. We also have a B&B, Bed and Bondage. Elizabeth doesn't do breakfast, where members and their guests can stay overnight and play all night long if they want, and then sleep over here. One of the things we do here, this is the gallery area, and I've created a space where the walls are constantly changing. I want the scene artists, and many of them are coming and going. They bring in pictures and drawings, photographs, and they hang up here for a while so that my members and non-members will get a chance to see the different scene artists. Also, the gallery is a space for masters and mistresses to display their submissives. Hi, welcome to the dungeon. Here you're going to be seeing a lot of different equipment that we use during our play and during the lessons that I give. The piece that I'm sitting on is called a suspended St. Catherine's wheel. It's 5 feet in diameter, and it's probably the centerpiece of my dungeon. I like it the best. You can do all sorts of things on it. You'll be able to attach people to the chains. You can have them laying up on their backs, on their tummies. You can play with a lot of different things on it. We also have the web, and the web is really interesting and unique. It is suspended from 4 points. You can attach people any way you want it. People can actually be suspended from it with a technique that I can teach you. We also have 2 slings. We have a larger sling, which is the Elizabeth Gonzalez sling, and a smaller sling, which is bought from Mr. S. And these are custom slings. They're made specifically for use in the dungeon and in your home, in the bedroom. The slings are used for a lot of different things. You can attach people, you can lay them down, you're totally supported. Your legs can be in several different positions, and so can your hands. It leaves the bottom, the person that's receiving the input, in a very, very comfortable, open, vulnerable position, and it provides the top total access around the person's body. We also have suspension cuffs that were purchased at one of the local leather stores, and I did that basically because of a lot of people that are coming into the scene have problems with their wrists, carpal tunnel syndrome. These cuffs show you, and if you'll look at them closely, you'll see that they're padded. The way they're used is to take off any stress and strain off of the wrist. The bondage benches and the bondage pieces are simply different sizes. We've got large ones, we've got small ones. You can put, and there are screw eyes along all of the perimeters of the piece. You can attach them through various modes of bondage, either leather bondage, rope bondage, or anything like that.
All right, Elizabeth. Okay, well, we haven't had an opportunity to see an actual playhouse or a play space. Now we're going to have the opportunity to see some of the equipment involved in S&M play. And Lady Green has brought some really wonderfully interesting and exciting looking tools with her. And I would like her to explain some of these and some of the usages of them. And why don't we start off with these things here.
Okay. You might hear these called cats of nine tails or flails. Usually I would refer to them as floggers. A flogger is any toy that has multiple tails like this. And one of the things that people don't understand, I think, about SM is they have this mental picture that the scene starts with something like that, whereas the fact is the scene starts with something like that.
So it's sort of like a tickling kind of thing.
You start very, very gently and slowly, and you build very gradually, and that's the way that people can find erotic pleasure in this kind of sense.
How long does it generally take? Do you build up to the whatever is the chosen grand finale?
Oh gosh, it depends a lot on the people involved and the nature of the scene. Some of what we're looking for when we do pain play is endorphins, which, as you probably know, are the body's own chemicals that come up when we have strong sensations. For most people, to get their endorphins running takes about 20 minutes. And so you don't move on to the heavy stuff until they're there, until they're starting to feel that
particular environment. Okay.
So often I will start a scene with this particular whip. First off, I love it because it's got the glittery handle and all. Also, these are very soft suede tails, and so used like this, they're very sensual, and yet you can build it up to a fairly strong sensation.
Okay.
And then I might move on to the next one, which is a little heavier in weight and a little harsher, not quite so soft. And again, start very gently and build it up again.
So if you say a little heavier, you mean then this one's going to hurt more?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And
so you don't pick up your nastiest things in the beginning, and this is
the python.
Yeah, this is even more intense. A friend of mine dubbed this Whoopi because it reminds her of Whoopi Goldberg's hair. So this is Whoopi.
The Rasta whip.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is a more intense one because these are braided, and so they have a little bit more weight and they're a little bit abrasive.
Okay.
So you build up very, very gradually.
So generally, you might have somebody who comes in, and this is what they want to start off with. There might be real.
Their eyes may be a little bit bigger than their stomach in terms of their fantasies, but that's part of my job as top is to not do that.
Okay.
You know, they need to understand that I have to have some space to do my job in. And if I'm any good at what I do, I'll be able to keep them from getting too bored.
Right.
While we build up to what their fantasies look like.
Obviously, you have lots of tools to use.
Yes,
so
that's right. It's not like I'm going to run out.
No.
We have bondage things here. I use a lot of plain rope for bondage. This is from a...
Bondage is, for the viewers?
Bondage is anything that you do to restrict someone's motion or senses.
Okay.
So it might be as simple as simply tying their hands in front of them, just as a reminder that they're in your control.
Up here a little bit to help
Sure. Or it might be very intense bondage that restricts their motion a great deal.
Okay.
So I carry some ropes of different kinds. different lengths, different textures. I carry some bondage cuffs. These help protect the joints in the wrist. And
So are there times with all this stuff where the person is actually suspended in the air?
Very rarely. That's considered very advanced play to actually suspend someone in the air. There's a real craft to building the structure of the bondage so that no part of them is getting pulled on in a harmful way. I personally wouldn't do it. I don't know how. But there are people who do know how and who teach that. Here in the Bay Area, we're very lucky because there are so many wonderful classes and workshops. So if you wanted to learn something like suspension bondage, there would be ways to do it.
So you can actually go to a class and learn?
Oh, absolutely. I teach them myself, and the House of Differences puts them on. Several other organizations put them on.
Well, how would you, how would you find out about these?
A good place to start would be by calling the Society of Janus in San Francisco. San Francisco Sex Information can guide you toward other resources. There are a lot of good SM resources in the Bay Area. Something that's important to remember about bondage is that the more helpless you make someone, the more responsible you are for their well-being while they're helpless. So if they get sick, or if they get panicked, or if something happens in the real world, if there's an earthquake or a fire, you're responsible for them. So I carry these. These are paramedic shears, like paramedics carry to cut people out of an accident or something. So if
somehow just the sight of that sort of...
No, these are not these are not for play. These are for emergencies. But if my bottom were to if my bottom were to get sick and needed to get loose right away, I wouldn't want to be standing there picking apart my knots. I would just cut them out. Similarly, in many emergencies, the first thing that happens is the lights go out in an earthquake or a fire or a power outage. So I carry a small flashlight so that I can find the things that I need to find to get them out. And it's got glow tape on it. So if the room is dark, I can find it.
Let's talk about these things here.
These are various kinds of toys, mostly for hitting butts.
For butt smacking.
Butt smacking. You could, some of these you could use on upper backs maybe, or on thighs.
Well, I notice you have a leather one here and you have a wooden one here.
Sure, you like to play with the different sensations. The leather one is floppier and kind of slappier, like that, which means it's a little harder to control.
But softer, I would suppose, than that one.
It has a little bit more range of sensation, and this is harder and harder.
Spank me when I was a bad little boy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And of course, we have a hairbrush too for your bad little boy fantasies.
I guess we won't go that way.
Straps and belts. This was made especially for play, whereas this is a cinch strap from a horse's saddle that I bought in a riding supply store. A lot of people, the first thing they think of when they think of SM is a riding crop. Actually, yeah, I do have a riding crop with me tonight. It's not something I use a lot. It's very floppy, hard to control. It's got this wrapping at the tip that doesn't feel very good.
I'd imagine, Nikki, that something like this would be really easy to hit someone in the eye with or something like that.
Yeah, or on parts of their body that aren't safe or don't feel good to be hit. Whereas this little one here, this is called a jockey bat, and it's like a little tiny paddle that's very controllable. So I use this a lot.
Okay. Well, if you could return over here, we'll bring these two over with you.
Okay.
And you can explain these. This is caning, I guess.
Yeah, these are canes, yeah. Caning is one of the more intense sensations that people enjoy. Some people hate it and don't want to do it, and that's fine. And some people love it and want to do lots of it, and that's fine too.
And in Singapore, if you're a bad boy and chew bubble gum and spray paint cars,
now these are not.
This is what you get to look forward to.
No, actually not. These are not like the canes in Singapore. I actually own one of the canes that they use in Singapore. It's about twice this thick and half again this long. It's a vicious thing that is not appropriate for use in a consensual scene. This is more like the canes that were used on schoolboys in English public schools. This is rattan. It's obviously it takes a little skill to get good with one of these because they're kind of floppy.
It's what Jane Austen learned.
Yeah. So this one is rattan, and this one is made of a man-made material, which is Delrin, which is nice if it's going to be exposed to any kind of body fluids because it's much easier to clean, whereas this being an organic material is difficult to clean. So it's like having a lot of brushes in your paint box if you're a painter.
Yeah, it's your play toys. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the show, but I have a couple questions that I think are real crucial.
Okay.
First of all, when you talk about a play scene or a play space, what goes on in a play space generally?
Typically, if you're in a public place
a
space.
code of conduct, I guess, is what I mean.
Okay.
As far as, how far do you go? What's your no sign or whatever?
Good questions. Okay. The general code of conduct is that we tend to be extremely careful about consent. We don't touch another person's body or property without explicit permission. The way we ascertain consent while the scene is going on, because lots of us have fantasies about pretending not to consent. We want to scream, no, 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 stop, please, no, anything but that. But that makes it difficult to know when we really do need it stopped. So we have something called a safe word.
Okay, what is your safe word?
My personal safe word, I use yellow to mean slow down and red for stop. And that's simply a way that the bottom can let the top know, or the top can let the bottom know, that something isn't working, and that the scene needs to either get scaled back a bit or stop altogether.
Okay.
In a public space, there are typically people whose job it is to make sure that everything is going smoothly, that everybody's following the rules, and that everybody's consenting.
So it's some kind of patrolling going on.
A dungeon monitor.
Probably a lot of self-patrolling as well.
Of course, yes.
Okay, for our last question, there is this idea of the top and the bottom, the sadist and the masochist. What is bottom space? What is top space? And finally, what is the dominatrix? We have roughly a minute left, so we're going to have to really get to the point here.
Okay, bottom space is a feeling of being very malleable, very suggestible, very much in wanting to please. Top space is a feeling of being powerful, in control, very much
this butchness kind of thing.
Oh, I wouldn't want to equate. I wouldn't want to equate it to butch and femme at all. It's just a feeling of competence, control, knowing which way things are going, feeling like you're on top of everything.
Okay.
It's a very strong sense of sort of psychic communication.
Okay.
A dominatrix, in the broad sense, is any female who dominates. In a narrower sense, it is a woman who makes money by satisfying people's submissive fantasies.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. That's all the time we have for What's Up With That. I'd like to thank Lady Green for coming on the show with us. And if you're walking down the street and you see something different and you wonder, hey, what's up with that? Well, tune into this show, What's Up With That, and maybe you'll find exactly what you're looking for. We'll see you next week on What's Up With That. Good night.